Hey guys, my name is Zach Bush, and I'm going to be teaching you how to create some zombie effects using a banana, a chicken bone, and fake blood, and an arm. And so I'll be starting out using this photo, and it's going to be changed into this. And you will need to have a basic knowledge of Photoshop for this tutorial, and I also do digital painting, but I'm not actually going to be going into a lot of depth on how to paint. My main focus for this tutorial is photo manipulation. I'm gonna just walk you through it. This is my first time creating a tutorial like this, so if it's kind of awkward or it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, you gotta bear with me because I am not very good at video editing or doing any of this recording stuff, but I'm trying to get into it. So just enjoy and let's get started. So I want to cut out the arm first. It's using the magnetic lasso tool. So that is underneath the lasso tool. I'll just click that now, and then we'll cut it out using that. Not going to worry about all the little small parts of my hand that I didn't select, because I'll just go back in with the quick mask and select that stuff to be a part of the selection. Zoom out a little bit. There you go, just alright, and now I'll hit my quick mask mode, which is down below your color selection. And I'll just select a simple brush. Make sure that it has a fairly soft edge. I think that's good enough. Now I'll just come out of quick mask mode. Actually, hold on. Got these parts, so select X, make it an inverted selection. That's good enough. Alright, now I'm going to come out of quick mask mode and invert the selection, which is Control-Shift-I, and make it a layer mask. Actually, I'll duplicate the layer before I do that, and then make my selection, so I'll have the background still visible. There we go. Now I have an easy cutout on my hand. Okay, this is where I'm going to be putting in the banana stock that many of you seen in the preview image that I showed. A banana is just a banana, but really you got to be thinking outside the box, because where are you going to find a real cut of somebody's arm, of somebody's body that's bleeding or looks nasty? You're either going to find it through real life experience, which is rare, or you're going to have to pay for it through a stock imagery site, and which can be expensive, and then you got to worry about copyright and how many times you use it, and just a lot of things that you don't want to get caught up in. So just taking ordinary objects of everyday life and trying to make them into something else is the real key of photo manipulation, because anybody can, I don't know, take a real cut and put it on somebody's arm and be like, oh, that looks gross, but it doesn't really, it's not as impactful if you were to take something that's not usually considered nasty and gross, like a banana, and making it into something like that, like a zombie, which is what I did. So that's what we'll be doing with this. I'm going to convert it into a smart object. So if I shrink it down and I like that size, that's fine. But if I want to blow it back up, I can do that, and I won't lose any of the image quality because it is a smart object. So that's what's really nice about smart objects in one way. Alright, so I'm gonna flip this horizontally. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm gonna flip it back and start to tweak it and try to play with it to fit on the arm. And I'll just make the opacity a little bit smaller so I can see what I'm doing, and make it a little bit bigger. There we go. I like that. I'm going to turn back on the background. And then also with smart objects, I'm going to double click and I'm going to open up the original banana. So whatever I do in this file, let's say I want to paint a huge, I don't know, cover up the scar like that. And if I save it, it will actually save it in my original file. So I can do anything I want in here. I'm going to undo this real quick, and it will affect the overall illustration. And it's nice because when you start moving stuff around, if you want to do something specifically for this cut, you want to move the entire cut around, you don't have to worry about finding all the layers. You can just find the smart object right here and move it around. So I need to save that and make that go away, which is what I did. And I'm going to go into, actually I want to probably make this file a little bit smaller because I don't need all the white extra space. I'll save that and make it that small, and then I'll go into my magnetic lasso tool and just go around this thing. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be blending it into the arm. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and make a layer mask over this and save it and just see what it looks like. I can go make this a little bit brighter. And what I'll be doing is using a soft brush and right clicking and select a soft brush. It's a basic brush that everybody has, so I don't have to worry about what brushes I'm using. And I'll just start erasing the edge so it can be blended into the arm better. I'll save that. See, it's already starting to work. So I'll have to do it above at the top here. And a little bit around the edge more. Save that again. Nope. Gotta do more of this. And then around here. Save it. Alright, I think that's getting more of what I want. I'll move it up a little bit. And I mean, I think I want it to be a little bit larger. So there we go. Because that is the main cut of the zombie. We're going to be adding in other small ones, but this is the main one out that's looks pretty gross and pretty cool. Now I want to blend the color of the banana onto the skin of my arm, and to do that, the way I'm going to do it is using hue and saturation. So I'm just going to select that, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key and select in between the layer banana, our banana layer, and the hue and saturation. So when I actually play around with the hue and saturation, it's only going to affect the banana. And then when I'm happy with the colors that I get for messing around with this, I'll put the hue and saturation into the banana folder, or banana smart objects. And let me just show you what I mean. So I'm going to mess with the masters first, and I'm just going to be playing around with the settings. So I'm going to decrease the master overall because it's just way too bright. and I'll just set it to -30 or -32, and then decrease the lightness a little bit to -10. There we go. And then I'm going to do the red. Probably not going to mess with this too much because it's looking pretty good so far. The saturation I feel like needs to go down quite a bit, and let's just say 50. And then I'm not going to mess with the lightness. Yellow, I'll probably mess with this a little bit. -11 works. And -23 is good. And then -21 is fine. I'm just eyeballing it. That looks pretty good for the skin. I'm going to have to touch up the sides a little bit so they blend better. But now what I'm going to do is just drag this hue and saturation into my Smart Object Banana file, delete this one, and then go back into my Banana file, say save, and then there we go. So it looks pretty good. So right now I'm going to erase some of the edge right here. So I'll go and select my eraser, increase the size using my bracket keys, flip this so I'll start erasing instead of adding more of the photo. Now what I'll do is probably close that for right now. Zoom in to see what it looks like. Now my forearm is kind of dark down here. What I'll do now is taking my levels, open those up, do the same thing, hold down Alt, click in between the layers so it only affects my banana, and decrease the brightness of the entire thing. And I'm just trying to match down here to my skin, and that's pretty good. So I'll select my layer mask of my levels and use a gradient, drag. I mean, you can use your brushes too. It doesn't really matter what you're using. I'll just use a brush as well and start to paint. Make sure it's white. Start to paint in there. See, that's blending pretty well. I'm gonna go back in to my banana folder, or banana smart object, sorry. I'm gonna zoom in. You see that white stripe right there? I'm gonna try to get rid of that. There's a lot of tedious stuff, but if you can get it to work well, it really pays off. It's because you may not ever see that, or viewer may never see that, but you do, and so it's just better to take care of the small stuff so you don't have to worry about it later. Let's save that, see what it does. It's taking it away a little bit. Yeah. There we go. It's blended pretty well. Alright, I'll close that out. I just want to add another cut over here, so I'm going to open up another banana stock that I took. I think it's this one, and I'm going to use this slash right here as another gross cut. Bananas are great. This is pretty much, I think I only use banana through the entire thing. So I'll grab it and put it in here, close out this. I want to take it outside the box of that and make it a smart object again. I'm going to speed up the video. I'm doing the exact same stuff as before with the first cut. I do, however, want to cut out some of this stuff so when I actually paint the background over my arm, you can see through it. So I just need to cut out the background of this banana photo. I'm just going to soften the brush up a little bit because the edge of the banana is not as hard as the brush I'm using. So I'm just going to try to match that. Another way that I can get the soft edge is to use the lasso tool and turn on feathering. I'll take it to 20% or 20 pixels and draw a line along here and just delete that, and you'll see that it gets a soft edge as well. You can just increase the feathering as much as you want and it will affect how hard this line is. Now I just need to, what's nice is I'll open up the same file of the cut, take this hue and saturation and duplicate it holding down Alt and dragging it into here, and that way it pretty much matches up the same color. I'll just create a new layer underneath both cuts for the background, and I'll hold down Alt, select the background color, and just paint where that crack is so I don't get confused. And I also just need to increase the opacity of the cut, and look at that. There we go. It's looking great already. Looks like flesh, and it's just a banana. Alright, but this down here I need to blend out a little bit better, so I'll close out this one, go into my layer mask of my banana, and just start to erase some of that. Now I'm just going to duplicate the level and put it inside the second cut and get rid of the effects that I had for the first cut, and just use a soft brush and paint in the shadows that are needed. Okay, for the sake of time, I decided to not record the next few cuts, but they're created the exact same way we did the first two, except for the layer mask is not inside the smart object. It's just a simple banana. There are all the color corrections, and the layer mask is on the outside. And now I'll be showing you how I achieve more detail through digital painting. I'm using a default soft brush with pen pressure turned on to paint in all the small details. It's good practice to always figure out how much time you want to invest in doing this part of the illustration work, because it can become very time consuming, very repetitive, and you just don't want to go around aimlessly painting everywhere. You want to have an idea, so I would encourage you to plan it out before you start, so you don't just lose your direction you're actually wanting to go. I'm looking at a lot of reference material that I found on the internet. I'm actually painting and doing this part of the illustration. I just looked up things like flesh wounds, zombie makeup, cuts, anything like that, and I got a lot of great material to look at when I'm painting, so I just don't have to always make up stuff, but I can use real life imagery for this part. when I'm zoomed in this much when I'm painting, I don't really worry about the brush or what kind of brush I'm using because it's just so small of detail that when you zoom out you won't be able to tell that it's actually painted, but it will look more like part of the photo. Now I'm just going to speed up the video so you don't have to sit here and watch me do, I don't know, 30 to 45 minutes worth of work on these small little details, because I don't think I would keep your attention during that whole time. Now I'm just erasing parts of the fingers and leaving some sections of the finger where I want the bone to show. Now I'm just adding some highlights in for the fingers or where the edge of the skin cuts off, and also adding in more digital painting of another bone for the hand, and I'll add the bones later on. Now I'm just going to place this bone in. It's from a chicken bone that I had for dinner last night. I just cleaned it off, and I'm going to cut it out using the magic wand tool. And then place it into, adjust it to the size I want using the transform tool. And then duplicating it using the Alt key and placing it in where the thumb bone would go. And this doesn't have to be exactly how bones look in real life, but this is a zombie, so I wasn't really focused on the correct anatomy. Now what I did there is use the selection from my layer that I painted in to erase parts of the bones that I didn't want. And then once I'm finished erasing and placing them in how I do want them, I will flatten the layers together, like so. And then I'm going to color correct it. I'm going to decrease the saturation because it was too bright. And I'm just playing around with the burn tool to make the shadows more realistic. And I'll go over these with some digital painting later to make them look more realistic. Now I just wanted to add a little bit more digital painting to break up some of the edges of the muscles that you can see, or the banana that you can see. I just wasn't happy with what I had, so just make it a little bit more interesting. Okay, moving on to the blood. I created my blood using I think it was corn syrup and food coloring and flour. And for time's sake, I cut it out already, and I will be using the same photo for all my blood. And right now I'm just duplicating the layer, and I rasterized it so I wouldn't be working with a smart object. And I'm just using the lasso tool to cut out sections that I think are interesting that will be used for different parts of the forearm. And then once I cut the selection out, I'm just using, again, transform to adjust it. And now I created a new folder, and I went down to my first photo of my cutout of my entire arm and just used the selection of that layer mask to create a new layer mask for my folder. So I'll have a place to put all my blood, and it won't overlap onto the background. And now I'm using the warp to adjust the blood to look like it's actually flowing over my forearm. I'm going into the layer effects and selecting overlay, and that will be able to show the detail of the forearm and the blood at the same time, so giving it more quality, and it just looks like it fits on the arm better. I'm just doing the same thing. I'm cutting out parts of the blood on my main image of the blood, and just using transform and warp to make it fit correctly. And once I'm done making the corrections to the blood, I will put it in the folder and set it to overlay and be finished with that piece. And I'll do this several times, so I'm going to speed it up so we'll get to the next step. Now I'm just going to duplicate the base image of the blood again and put it over top of my entire hand instead of having to do each individual strand. I think there's enough variety in the wrinkles of the blood to make it work for the hand overall. Just place it into the folder and then apply an overlay to it. And what I'm doing is adjusting it a little bit more so it looks like it's hanging from the hand. And then I'll add a layer mask to the whole entire thing, and I'll invert the layer mask so it all goes away, and I'll actually paint in where the blood shows up. So I'll have control over it instead of having to just use the entire image. I want to add a couple more blood strands of my own through digital painting. I just want to make sure my eyedropper is selected and the current layer is set instead of all layers, so I can only sample the colors of the blood. And then I'll go ahead and start painting directly on the blood layer. And just sample the color and not have to worry about sampling the colors of the hands or anything else. And then I can also sample the white highlights of the blood as well, which is what I'll do. Here I created two new clipping mask layers for the blood. One is hue and saturation, and the other one's a curves. I desaturated the brightness of the blood using the hue and saturation. For the curves mode, I'm darkening the blood to make it look more dry and not as bright. Then I do a little bit of erasing inside the curves mode for where the brightness is needed. Then I create a gradient fill, and I'm just using two muted green colors for the color of the skin. Then I set the blend mode to color. I invert the layer mask, and I just paint in where I want the green to show up on the skin. Next thing I do is I create another curves layer and then increase the brightness, and then invert the layer mask, and then I'm actually painting in where I want the highlights to show up from the light on the hand. Here I'm getting rid of a little bit more of the color in the arm using a hue and saturation layer. The last thing I'm doing is painting a little bit more of the blood that's dripping off my arm, so it breaks up the sharp edge from when I first cut out my arm. I'm just finishing up with the bone, going over it again with some more paint to make it have a little bit more detail. It's looking kind of flat. And then I went back to my highlight layer and just painted in that. And that about wraps it up. Appreciate you guys watching. And that's how I created a zombie arm using banana and a chicken bone. If you have any questions, you can email me or leave it in the comments and I will try to get back to them as soon as I can. Thanks.